Good afternoon, everyone. I'm your host, Dean Faile with Taking Care of Business, and I am the Chamber of Commerce President and CEO for Lancaster County. Our guest today is Dr. Jonathan Phipps, Superintendent of Lancaster County School District, one of, if not the largest school districts in the three-county region. Like all Chamber events, this is brought to you by courtesy of our sponsors, and our sponsors include Comporium, Founders Federal Credit Union, INSP Crossridge, MUSC Health, Lancaster Medical Center, Nutramax Laboratories, Oceana Gold, the Hell operation, and the PCI Group. Also, we'd like to give a special shout out and thank you to our studio host today, and that's Marty Haynes with Haynes Full Circle Benefit. And we've got a quick message from Marty right now.
2020 has most definitely been a different kind of year. With challenge comes opportunities. Open enrollment for individual marketplace plans, Medicare Advantage, and prescription drug plans will be here before we know it. This year, we're excited to offer a few additional options for you to enroll for the upcoming open enrollment period. Phone enrollment, virtual enrollment, and also in-office meetings. We are looking forward to an exciting open enrollment season. We encourage you to contact our office early to set up an appointment. As always, thank you for being a valued client of HFC Benefits.
Thank you, Marty. So our guest today is Dr. Jonathan Phipps. Jonathan was born in Johnson City, Tennessee, son of a pastor, moved around to a number of South and North Carolina communities. He studied at UNCC, USC, Winthrop, and received his doctorate from Capella University. He began his education career right here in Lancaster. At Bar Street Middle School. He was assistant principal at Indianland Middle, principal at Rucker Middle, moved on to be director of secondary education for the school district, and then had an opportunity to move to Abbeville. He was in Abbeville for a number of years as superintendent, and recently, 4 years ago, hard to believe, it's been that long already, Jonathan, but he came back to be home and our superintendent, and we are fortunate to have him. And Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Dean. Thanks for having me.
Sure. Well, I think we're going to just jump right in. By now, everybody knows the plan schedule, an A-B schedule, a 2-day in-classroom for students, a 3-day virtual type model. Certainly that created challenges for you guys to figure out how to do that, to allow the kids to be in school and in class safely. But it also creates challenges for families, for parents, for people who are in work. The question I'm getting a lot of, particularly from employers, is what will it take for us to get back to 5-day-a-week classroom time?
Yeah, we're looking at using the DHEC guidelines, the model. There's 3 things that we'll look at. We'll look at the incident rate, the trend in the incident rate, and the number of positive percent cases. And when you look at that right now across the state of South Carolina, those are actually going down across the state. Lancaster County, unfortunately, we're still going up. And so we'll monitor those real close. And then, of course, at the school level, we'll look to see at the school level exactly how we're looking with the number of incident cases we have and folks are in quarantine. But we're optimistic, but the numbers so far haven't been in our favor.
Sure, I understand. I noticed on the news this morning that North Carolina almost doubled their number of cases reported yesterday, and they are attributing that to school. So I guess the other question really is the other side of that coin. What's it going to take, or what's the possibility, or when might we go all virtual if we had to?
Yeah, that's a scary question because our hope is that through this A-B schedule that we have for the kids that are attending, by being half the number of students, actually it's less than half because we have over 30% of our kids are going to be virtual. So the numbers right now are looking like in the classroom, anywhere from 10 to 12 students per class. It could be more for some classes, but the idea that we can social distance is a great thing with that. So to actually shut us down, we're going to use the same model that we use for the flu, which is if 10% of the school, if the enrollees, if 10% of the school, then we would have to shut the school down if they're infected. In a classroom, it's 20%. So if you have 10 kids in a class, now I'm an old history teacher, but if you have 10 kids in a class and then it's 20%, then you're looking at if two of those are infected, would be 80% would be positive. So anyway, you would have to shut them down.
So not too many is what you're saying, but
no, and I think we've done a really good job even before school has started, making sure my phone is off here. We've done a really good job even tracking. DHEC requires us to report every time we have a case, and we've put folks on quarantine. And I tell you, before school has even started, within the last week and a half, we've put probably anywhere between 50, 60 or so folks quarantined them even before school has started.
Gotcha. Talk a minute about when somebody drops off their child next Monday. What does that look like? I mean, I know that it said we can get our kids there about the same time, but I think classes backed up a little bit in elementary schools and some of the other. I'm assuming that's for some sort of screening check. Talk through that just a second of what parents might expect when they drop their child off.
Sure. Well, our times changed originally because of our transportation issues.
Right.
The State Department of Education said we can only have 50% of capacity on the buses. They've changed that to an odd number, like 67% now. Not real sure why, but and we didn't find out about that until they released it to the media. So that never was official. But so in the mornings when you drop your child off, temperatures will be taken of everyone, including adults, before they enter the building. That will be car riders. In most cases, we think we're going to be able to actually take the temperature of the kids before they get out of the car, which I say that, and it's good that we let people know that, because I don't know if you've ever experienced a car rider line. Matter of fact, I know you've experienced a car rider line with your kids. So, but with the car riders, especially in our really congested areas, and I don't want to call out any by name, but let's just look at Indialand, for example. If you look at Indialand Elementary, in that campus, there's Indialand Elementary, Middle, and High in the same campus. And if we didn't spread out those start times, there's a tremendous amount of car riders. It's going to take us longer to get them out of the car. So, we're encouraging parents as school begins, there'll be a larger window of time for them to drop the kids off, which should make it a little bit easier with the traffic flow. So we'll take their temperatures. We'll ask them if they've experienced any symptoms, and find out if anybody in their house has symptoms. If they are symptomatic, or if they have a temperature over 100 degrees, then we'll have a little holding spot for them to wait and call their parents to come pick them up. The same thing is true with the buses. When the kids get off the bus, we'll take their temperatures, they enter in. And I expect, I'm pretty sure the first couple of days, that's going to be a little odd for everybody. But, sure. We're all natured with routines and getting used to that. So I think as time moves on, it's going to be okay.
Sure, absolutely. Well, another question that kind of came to my mind, a lot of kids play youth sports. Everybody's interested in college football, but I imagine all those high school kids are more interested in high school football, high school girls volleyball, that sort of thing, those fall sports. What does that look like? Are we going to have fall sports? Are we going to have fans in the stands, no fans in the stands, or the gyms? Just what's that going to be like?
Well, that is a really hot topic, because we have really zeroed in on making sure that we keep the kids safe during the school day. Of course, the high school league. Be careful how I say this. I had a conversation with Jerome Singleton, who is who's over the high school league, and I forget what his title is, but he's the commissioner of the high school league, and he and I had a little back and forth this week, because they are asking for permission for us to have, for all the schools across the state, to have up to 50% capacity inside the football stadiums. Well, let's think about that just a minute. Let's think about the larger schools. Let's think about Lancaster High School. If the capacity there is 3,500, does that mean that we're going to allow half that number to come in? If we did, then can we ask folks to social distance? And so that's been a major concern. And our testing group that we're looking at with how we're going to do this right now is looking at volleyball and looking at the season, because it's inside and it's less students. And so we're going to limit those numbers and look to see how that works. I don't know, you're like me, live in Lancaster. We lived through high school graduation last year. I hope I never go through that again with limiting the number of tickets for high school graduation. I was called everything except for child of God. I mean, I was called a lot of things. And so I don't want to do that again. And I don't want every Friday night to be like high school graduation. And so that's what I told the commissioner. I said, if we're going to do something statewide, why not do something that is the same as we're doing during the school day statewide, which most school districts across the state of South Carolina have an alternative schedule, or and there's less students in the classroom during the day because of virtual, one or the other. And his response was, well, some people want to have 50%, so we're doing this for everybody, and you can have less than 50%. So again, the local school districts, we're going to be the heavies and the bad guys to limit the number of tickets. But, I've given you a long answer. It's like you asked me what time it is. I'm telling you how to build a clock. But the quick answer is we're going to definitely limit the numbers. That remains to be seen. It could be just 25% of capacity. We want to make sure that if parents want to come watch them play, I think that's important. We're going to try to make sure that happens. You were cutting up about it being no one watching. We've talked about that. We've talked about broadcasting all the games and allowing people to watch. That would be really simple in some ways to do. But we're not there yet. And so that's still a month out, and we're looking at all options.
Absolutely. Well, you touched on an interesting side topic of home rule in South Carolina. I tend to be a fan of home rule, but it seems like Columbia seems to be giving the local officials the difficult decisions these days and not taking responsibility for some of the tough decisions. But we'll have that conversation maybe another day. Along with sports, I mean, you've got a lot of students that are into performing arts, extracurricular activities along the arts arena, drama, dance, chorus, those sort of things. Are those students going to be able to participate in those sort of activities this year? Or how is that going to work? I know that would be a great loss, and to not be able to have those programs.
We are doing everything we can to keep the arts programs alive this year. I mean, the CDC recommendations, we all have heard over and over the 6 foot apart and staying not close to someone. If you're in a performing arts and you're playing a wind instrument, the rule of thumb is 16 to 20 feet apart.
Wow.
And a lot of that also goes with course classes, with the singing and projecting. So we've looked at that. We've measured band rooms. We've done, and so we're going to have to get really creative with that. We've looked at some online instruction so that if students choose virtual, they still can be a part of a course class or part of a band class. And we've even looked at how is that going to work in students who we loan them instruments and they check them out if they can come and get them and practice at home. I know the parents love that if you're home all day with a tuba, but we've looked at different options of that, because that's a piece that we don't need to let go. I mean, for some students, they thrive on sports, and that's fantastic. Other students thrive in the arts. Both are just as important as the others. So we want to make sure if we're able to figure out a way to do sports, we need to figure out a way to keep our arts going. So we're going to do our best with that.
Yeah, absolutely, Jonathan. I mean, from a business perspective, business leaders love both team sports and the arts. They teach some of the same skills that we look for out of employees all the time. That collaboration, teamwork, all those sorts of things. So we appreciate what you're trying to do there. Talking about businesses a minute, one question is that I've received, and I'm not sure it's a fair or even a reasonable concern, but the concern is, in this changing environment with the way we're having to teach, is maybe the education is not going to be as good as it has been. Do we have a potential future workforce that's less qualified that went through the pandemic than we do right now? I mean, is that a fair concern, or do you think that's a little bit unreasonable?
No, I think that the folks would naturally think that, because you look at the number of hours that we're going to spend with students, and they would think, well, what can they get in 2 days a week? I mean, I've heard that. Believe me, I've heard that. Let's think about this just a minute. If a teacher, when I was in the classroom, and my largest class is maybe 28 to a class when I was in the classroom, compare that to this year, 10 or 12 to a class. I can promise you that students will have more one-on-one attention and getting the help they need this year more than they ever have before. As a matter of fact, that's a conversation we begin having with our principals, is to look at the MAP scores at the beginning of the year and identify the shortcomings or where we need to shore up since students have been out of school for 5.5 months, and to look at that and do more of an individualized instruction more than we ever have before. And so, we've even looked at, we do something called curriculum mapping, where we look over the course of a semester when we know we need to cover these standards. What do you need? Where do you need to be on which day to make sure you finish up on time? And we've began looking at those curriculum maps and adjusting those so that we can cover more material on those days that we have students. So, I think the first couple weeks are going to be touch and go with all of that because it's totally new. Teachers are going to have to reinvent the way they teach, because their pacing, how they pace themselves with instruction, I think is going to change greatly, because you're going to have that more one-on-one instruction. So, that relevance and relationships are the two things that make a difference, I think, my philosophy with a child. And it'll give the opportunity with the lower class numbers for teachers to really have a good relationship with the kids, to see what their needs are, to really find out one-on-one and have those conversations. And then we always, and from the business world how important this is, we try to make everything relevant, which is why we were pushing our STEAM program, or we're continuing to push our STEAM program, to show how that what kids learn, we need to make it relevant to the workplace. So I'm optimistic. I mean, I know there are challenges, but we always have challenges, and this is this year's challenge, and we're going to do our best to meet it.
Well, one thing you're doing is actually teaching them to work from home right out of the gate. I mean, I've had to relearn that myself, and so has our staff. So those are challenges themselves. On that subject, I know yesterday y'all had a broadband test at the school.
Did.
Broadband's a big deal. There was a big concern around not only here but across the state and across the nation with broadband availability. You had mentioned Comporium has been working with you guys and doing a great job. But talk a little bit about the challenges with broadband, and then what other challenges are you facing that maybe some of our other local businesses or providers could assist you with?
Yeah, the broadband was a real issue. It's really interesting, Dean. The first survey we sent out at the end of last school year, we had a high school graduations, and on that same week of high school graduations, we started planning for this year, and we started developing surveys and sending those out to see what worked last year. That initial survey said that it was a tremendous amount of folks said they didn't have the broadband they needed. And the funny thing is, a couple of weeks ago, we received our second survey group with a lot of the same parents that were surveyed. Well, it was the same parents surveyed. And miraculously, after the kids had been with them over the summer for 5.5 months, they found Wi-Fi. I don't know if they didn't understand the first question, but so, to shore up those folks that didn't have the connectivity that they need to be successful, we decided to apply for as many grants as we could possibly lay our hands on to offer wireless Wi-Fi is what we found a grant for through the state. We secured over 5,200 internet Wi-Fi boxes so that kids can use their laptops to go online with that. And so we think that's going to be a game changer. The contract only allowed us to use either Verizon or AT&T, which isn't a bad thing in the fact that if your connectivity is good with one or the other, we give you that option. So folks can go online to our website. As a matter of fact, today we have 4 locations that we're giving those out at different schools around the county where we've called and let parents know they can come pick them up. And I think that's going to be a game changer. But I think businesses have been so incredibly supportive and reached out. The main thing that I've seen businesses reaching out to help us with is the PPEs, the mask, face masks, and those things. We cannot have enough of those to give out, because we really don't know how many of our students are going to have the availability of those when they come. And, when a kid forgets their pencil, you throw them another pencil. That's no big deal. If they forget their face mask, those aren't something that teachers buy by the thousands to have. So we've tried to secure some disposable face masks. We've tried, if as many as the cotton masks that we can receive, that students can take home and teach them how to wash them and clean them so that we can just slow the spread as best we can.
Absolutely. And I mentioned to you, we've got a delivery we're expecting to have come in tomorrow to the chamber, and we're going to provide 2,500 of those cotton reusable masks to the school district for you guys.
We really appreciate that. That is fantastic. And I'll tell you, and I don't want to complain because the State Department does wonderful things, but here's an example of what the State Department gave us. Now I'm a full-size man, so it'll fit on one ear. So they gave these 5 of these per teacher, and we appreciate it. But most people that are normal grown adults can't wear these. So we're giving those. We'll have those for elementary kids, and so any that we can receive. Most of our teachers have said they want to have their own personal, and some of the schools are buying them with logos and things. But we'll take any that we can get and be creative with them. We appreciate any donation.
Sure. The district has had, and education as a whole, you guys had to pivot so quickly through this. Last March, I know a lot of parents weren't real crazy about the packets, and I think a lot of the teachers weren't real crazy about the packets, but it was very impressive how quickly you guys pulled that off, and all the things that you've put in place just this summer. With that in mind, what changes do you think may become permanent even after COVID is over, and or what things have strengthened the district or possibly weakened it as a result of some of these things?
That's a good question. Something that's I'll start with backwards. The thing that has strengthened, I think, in our district, you mentioned earlier places I've worked. It's kind of scary because I don't feel that old, but I've been an administrator for about 20 years now, either an assistant principal, or superintendent, and the amount of time that our administrative staff in this district have spent working together this summer and working collectively and listening to everyone's ideas. It has never been this way in our district. I think that our administrative staff and planning has grown closer together and and I think we're probably the strongest we've ever been. And we've looked at so many things, not just the safety piece, which is number one concern, but then also what you asked me earlier with making sure that the kids are still getting a quality education. And, and a lot of our principals from elementary to the high school share their collective knowledge. And I may be wrong, but I don't think it's that way in every district where everybody has a voice. And I think we have really grown together and we've become stronger. And I for one, am excited that will continue because I think it's given people the opportunity to really step up and to do. The other thing that I think has been a changer and a game changer, I think this whole online piece. I think I've heard some parents that have said they didn't realize that this was an option with the virtual SC the way. And the virtual SC, that program, and I don't want to chase a rabbit, but let me just tell you real quick. The virtual SC program is a program where basically you give the students the assignments and they will work on those high school. They'll work on those, and it is a curriculum from the Department of Ed that's adopted through them, and it's our teachers that check in with them. We've had over 600 high school students that have registered for that program. That's the 3rd largest high school in the county. And so I think that's a game changer because I think a lot of parents, if that works well for some students that maybe are not always successful in the schools. And as you mentioned earlier, so much of businesses now is working online.
Right.
And so, I think it has opened up the door, and maybe our course offerings can even grow in the future because we can offer more online instruction.
Well, I think that would be great. And you and I both know, we've both talked before about every student is unique. And some students learn differently. They learn better virtually, through online kind of self-paced courses. Some really need that face-to-face time all the time. So I think that's a great opportunity. I've got a question that came in, it looks like in the comments, going back to the sports question, wondering about, will practices take place daily? And you mentioned bus transportation to school and back was limited. What do you do with the football team going out of town on a football game? Is it going to take 6 buses now instead of 3?
Yes. The South Carolina High School League, the original the original instructions they gave us, they said you could have no more than 10 people on the field practicing. Let that sink in. That also means that your coaches count in those 10.
Wow.
So, our practice this year has been real interesting. And then if one student tests positive, if any of the other students have been within 6 feet of them without a mask for over 15 minutes, then they have to go home for 14 days. So we've had to deal with that this year in figuring out with the sports program. So, sports, as for practice, my guess would be in most cases it will not be every day. It could if they can space out adequately. And the system that the high school league is on, I think now we're on the 1.5. So what that means is it is less restrictive the higher up, and so the 1.5, I think we still have just a limited number of players that can practice. Now the busing thing here's something that most folks don't think about that I wouldn't think about unless I was in this business. When you mentioned that it'll be double the amount of buses on Friday night to take football teams from one to the other. Okay, on a Friday night, we rely on people coming to the games and paying the $6 or whatever to get in. And when they pay, that money stays at the school and it pays for the athletics and pays for the buses, or pays for part of that, pays for the drivers. So if we have to double the amount of buses, double the amount of people we pay to drive, double all of that, but yet we're going to allow 25% of the players to come. Now, I'm not a real smart businessman, but I don't see that working very long.
That math works about like our DOT and gas tax numbers did about 5 years ago. We're about to wrap it up here, but let me just ask you this, kind of on a personal level. What's been the most frustrating part of this for you? I just can't even. If anybody envied your job before this, they're crazy, but they're crazy now, even more crazy now. But what's been the most frustrating thing for you, John?
Columbia.
All right. So if you're going to say Columbia, I'll ask this question. If there's one thing you could get Columbia or the elected officials to address that would help you and help education be more successful, what would that be?
If folks in Columbia, if the right hand knew what the left hand was doing and they could work together, would certainly make our life a lot easier. When you have the governor's office on the day that he comes out and announces that he really thinks we need to have 5 days a week, and that he's going to have allow waivers for folks to gather more than 250, but those waivers won't be given through the health department. They're given through the commerce department. Yeah. So when you have when you have that going on mixed with the Department of Ed, who we're supposed to listen to as public schools, and the Department of Education gives us a 202-page document that outlines our regulations of what we should do during this whole pandemic, and those two things really don't match. And then when you have the high school league that's doing something different than what the State Department's telling us to do, and different than what the governor's telling us to do. But at the local level, I have folks upset with me because they think we're just not listening. Well, I'm listening, but there's a lot of different sources. And of course, then the president announces that we may lose our CARES Act funding if we don't go 5 days a week. That was given last week. So that's been, I believe you always respect positions, and I don't mean any disrespect to the governor's office, and I greatly respect that position, but I just wish they would communicate more and work together. And I think that's probably been true forever, but I think that lack of working together really, I don't want to use the word leadership, but that lack of working together is really shown through this pandemic more than ever. And the only folks that suffer with that is us, is the kids, and is the teachers. And so that would be it, that in a nutshell. Most people have said what you have said, that they wouldn't, when they find out, what I do for a living, if anybody ever asks, and they say, oh Lord, I wouldn't do that for no amount of money, and so, but it's just where we are. And I think we've all had to monitor and adjust at every level and every job. I know COVID is going to leave us different, even if it disappears miraculously. I think it has changed the way we look at educating kids forever.
Absolutely. And you're right. The lack of communication at all levels of government are not a good thing for students, for individuals, or for business. We all need a little bit of the ability to foresee what's coming. And when things are constantly changing, it's hard to plan for that. And I know it's been hard for you to plan for this. I know not everybody's always happy with the decisions you make. Not everybody's happy with the decisions I make, but we do the best we can and we keep moving. And I thank you and applaud you for that, Jonathan. And most of all, I appreciate the fact that you've told me over and over, whether it's one-on-one or in public settings, that when it comes to our kids, you're going to put safety first. And if somebody has a problem with that, they're just going to have a problem with that. And I appreciate that and I respect that. And thank you. And thanks again to our sponsors. Thanks to Marty Haynes. I hope everybody enjoyed it. I see a few people are laughing at us, Jonathan, but that's okay. I hope they come back in a couple of weeks and laugh at me again. Y'all have a good day. And this is Taking Care of Business with Dean Faile, Lancaster County Chamber of Commerce.